So in this class, you probably noticed that we usually kind of do a bunch of experiments and then we give you the answers later. So you experience something and then we give you the vocabulary to explain it. But this is an instance where we're going to give you the vocabulary first, so that way you have the words that you need to describe things as you learn about them later. So we're going to be talking about the different types of matter and how to classify it into 4 different types. Just a reminder from 6th grade, what is matter? It's anything that has mass and occupies space or has volume. So all the stuff we've been learning about this year has all been about matter. It's all been about these substances that have mass and occupy space. Matter's made up of atoms. Remember that atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. So you've got your nucleus in the middle with the protons and neutrons, and then the electrons orbiting around. Now we're going to draw this chart to classify matter into 4 different types. And I'd like you to make sure that you draw this chart large enough that you have enough room for all of it. We're going to start by dividing matter into 2 different categories. The first is mixtures. And you already know a little bit about mixtures because the solutions that we've been mixing together in chapter 4 are mixtures. So mixtures are composed of 2 or more different substances, and they can be separated by a physical change. So these are things that aren't chemically bonded, they're just mixed together. On the other hand, pure substances are made of one substance all the way through. And they have a definite chemical formula. These are things that cannot be separated by a physical change. So you can't just take them apart, you need to chemically react them or do a chemical change if you want to separate them. There are 2 different kinds of mixtures. The first kind is called heterogeneous mixtures. These are mixtures that aren't the same all the way throughout. They can usually be separated by filtering or just letting the mixture settle, or maybe you could pick the pieces apart. So a good example is sand and water. If you have a mixture of sand and water, the sand is going to settle to the bottom. So you could easily separate it just by letting it settle or just by filtering it. Heterogeneous means different, and so these mixtures have different parts. Homogeneous mixtures are mixtures that are the same all the way throughout. So they can't just be separated by filtering or letting it settle. These are called solutions. You'd have to do some other kind of physical change to separate it. So for example, salt water, you'd have to boil away the water and then the salt would be left behind. All the solutions we've been working with in chapter 4 are homogeneous mixtures. So those are mixtures. Those are physically combined. Now let's talk about pure substances. There are 2 kinds of those. The first kind is called elements. These are pure substances that cannot be separated by a chemical change. They're made of one type of atom all the way through. For example, copper, if it's pure, is made of only copper atoms. They're not bonded together or anything, so you can't separate copper into anything smaller than copper by doing any kind of chemical change. The second kind of pure substance is called a compound. Compounds can be separated by a chemical change, and that's because they're made of 2 or more types of atoms bonded together. So, for example, baking soda is made of 4 different types of atoms. The sodium, Na, hydrogen, H, carbon, C, and the oxygens, O. Those are 4 different elements, but they're chemically bonded together. We can't separate them with a physical change, we have to separate them with a chemical change. And we did that in our very first experiment of the year when we took the baking soda and heated it, and we separated it into its various substances that made it up. So something that you can separate with a chemical change is called a compound. Now the smallest unit of each of these types of substances has different names. The smallest unit of an element that still has all the properties of that element is an atom. So for instance, for copper, 1 atom of copper is still copper. The smallest unit of a compound that still has all the properties of that compound is called a molecule. So for instance, sugar, the smallest piece of sugar that is still made of sugar is a sugar molecule, and molecules are made up of atoms. Here are a couple examples of molecules. You'll see that each of them is made of several atoms bonded together. That's what the little sticks in between of them represent. You can see water, H2O, with the 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen bonded together. Ammonia, NH3, with the 3 hydrogens and the 1 nitrogen bonded together. Carbon dioxide, with the 1 carbon and 2 oxygens bonded together. And methane, with 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens bonded together. If you did a chemical change that separated these atoms apart, they wouldn't be the same substance anymore. So you can't split a molecule up and have it still be that same pure substance. So let's now classify these 3 gases. The hydrogen you produced when you combined magnesium with sulfuric acid is an element. It's only made of hydrogen atoms. Since it's made of only 1 type of atom all the way through, it's an element. The carbon dioxide that you made when you reacted magnesium with magnesium carbonate with this sulfuric acid is a compound. It's made of carbon and 2 oxygen atoms bonded together. So it's a pure substance. It has its own chemical formula, but it's made of more than 1 type of atom, so it's a compound. Then the air, on the other hand, is a mixture. It's a homogeneous mixture. It's the same all the way through, but it's made of several different gases that aren't bonded together. They're just mixed together. Mostly nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, and other gases. All right, now let's do a little practice. I'd like you to classify each of these 4 substances. Ice water, ice cream, my favorite, mint chocolate chip, Kool-Aid, the powder mixed in with the water, not the powder by itself, and then finally mercury. Pause, figure out how you'd classify each one, and then press play when you're ready for the answers. Ready for the answers? Here it goes. Ice water is a compound. It's hydrogen and oxygen together, but it's all made of H2O. It's all the same stuff all the way through, so it's a pure substance, and it's a compound. Ice cream is a heterogeneous mixture. It's not the same stuff all the way through. You could take 1 spoonful of ice cream and have no chocolate chips in it, and another one and have lots of chocolate chips in it. That's what makes it heterogeneous. Kool-Aid is a homogeneous mixture, or a solution. It's the same all the way through, but the Kool-Aid powder didn't react with the water. It just mixed in with it. We could boil off the water, and the Kool-Aid powder would be left behind. Finally, mercury is an element. It's made only of mercury atoms. Since it's only 1 type of atom, that makes it an element. All right, that's it for now.